What is the aircraft utilization rate of a modern international airline? By me, Duncan Williamson, on behalf of or in collaboration with, cooperation with Excel Virtually Global 2025. There I am, teacher, trainer at DW. My email address should you want to get in contact with me, and I've left someproduct.com out of respect for them, for letting me be here today. So my name then is Duncan Williamson, and today I want to take you on a detailed exploration of an intriguing question that I've had for years. How much do modern international airlines actually use their aircraft on a daily basis? So many travellers have seen rows of grounded aircraft at airports and wondered, are these planes barely flying, or are airlines running their fleets close to full tilt? In early 2024, I began a data-driven quest to find out exactly what the aircraft utilization rates looked like for some of the world's major airlines. So my motivation and research question: when walking through airports, seeing so many planes parked for long stretches, I often found myself asking, how do airlines manage their fleets? Are these aircraft idle for days or weeks? And what's the average utilization rate, the fraction of time that their planes spend in the air? And to answer this, I turn to publicly available flight tracking data, fleet size information, and detailed scheduling data. My data source and the methodology: the primary source of this study was www.flightradar24.com, a live flight tracking service offering comprehensive, up-to-the-minute flight data worldwide. And this allowed me to track how many aircraft an airline owns or leases, their fleet size, observe how many aircraft are actively flying at any given moment, and analyze detailed flight schedules and actual flight times. To keep the study manageable and focused, I selected 6 airlines representing diverse operational models, and they were Emirates Airlines, Singapore Airlines, British Airways, United Airlines, Ryanair, and only for 2025, China Eastern Airlines. So data collected over 2 main periods, January to March 2024 and September 2025. And I did those in 2 sections, you appreciate, to check the first one and look for consistency, trends, and so on. Fleet size overview. Fleet sizes as at September 2025, Emirates have 271, British Airways 304, United Airlines 1,504, Singapore 154, Ryanair 592 aircraft, and China Eastern Airlines 672. As you can see, these airlines vary significantly in size and operational scope, from ultra-low-cost Ryanair to network-heavy United. So what do we mean by aircraft utilization? Well, for this study, I defined it as this: the percentage of an airline's fleet actively flying at a given time. This can vary by hour of the day, day of the week, and also seasonally, depending on demand. And by examining snapshots throughout the day and over multiple days, trends and variability can be understood. Here's my spreadsheet from 2024. Now, there are holes in it because I've got 207 readings for Emirates. I started with Emirates, and then after a few days, I decided to add British Airways and United, so there's a few days missing from their records. Then another 10 days or so after that, I brought on Singapore Airlines and Ryanair. And from then on, you can see 207 for Emirates, 199 for British Airways and United, and 178 for Singapore and Ryanair. On this table, nothing for China Eastern because they only came in 2025. I took these readings when I could, or when I could see gaps appearing in the data, not to any particular pattern, and just look at the table, look at the dates, look at the times. There may be 1 or 2 on one day and 4 or 5 on another one, and then 9 a.m., 7 a.m., 12, goodness knows what. And I need to point out, as I have already actually, fleet sizes early in 2024 were different from what they are now. I used Bicol, as you can see at the bottom of the slide, to find the descriptive statistics. And this table is in 2 parts. Left-hand side, numbers of flights. They call them live flights. So the average live flight number for Emirates, from my sample, was 127.22. United, 477. Ryanair, 186.58. Their utilization rate, based on those numbers and their fleet size, as you can see, from 47 to 38 to 32, 48, and 34. Median, standard deviation, kurtosis, and so on, also in that table. And I do want to point out from an Excel point of view that I use what I'm calling the pre-ETA version of Bicol in 2024. And then I don't know who discovered that there's an ETA version where you can dump the lambda and then the lambda becomes inherent. So the Bicol function now is much, much simpler. And here's the visualization. Again, for Emirates only, by day, by date, by hour in a radar chart, and then by histogram and by box and whisker. And I was a bit surprised that the box and whisker block didn't show any outliers. I thought there must be, but there aren't. Actually, can I point out on this slide as well, something I'll show you in more detail in a second. There are one band of flights here, or there is one band, and mainly there's this band. Maybe not apparent for everyone, but I see another band here. I'll come back to that in a second. But that's Emirates overview. And there's the band for British Airways. That was the 2024 data. This is 2025. You can see definite split of data with British Airways and United and Ryanair and China Eastern now. Exactly why, actually, I'm not too sure, but it's there. Back to 2024, radar charts for British Airways down to Ryanair. These gaps reflect the fact that I missed some dates and I didn't pretend that they weren't there. So the gap here for the few days that I missed for them and the 2 weeks or so I missed for them. But look at them, quite consistent. I think even more consistent. And then this, wild. And this one, even more wild. You'll see more in a minute. I use Power Query with all of them, and this is the one for Emirates, to bring the data together in a more manageable way for when I put data in a pivot table. And I often do that anyway, because when you get an accounting matrix with all the months or years across the top and all the line items down the bottom, down the left-hand side, putting them in a pivot table, absolute nightmare. So I don't do it. So I unpivoted the data in Power Query, and it makes this pivot table a breeze to create. The mystery chart. I've shown you all of those charts already for Emirates and the other airlines, but there is a mystery chart. I gathered my data in the way you've seen. I created my charts and tables and other evaluations that you also see. And I have answers now to my questions relating to aircraft utilization of these airlines. But there's one more chart to share with you, and that chart gave me the greatest satisfaction of everything I did in this study. And I'll share that chart with you shortly. Before I do that, I took a much deeper dive into Emirates Airlines. I could have done this with all of the airlines, not only Emirates, and British Airways and United, but I didn't, because actually this is the biggest part of the job. where I went and took a look at, in this case, 266 aircraft that Emirates owns. I put all the details along the lines you can see on the table on the right-hand side. I created a random sample of 30 of them so that I could then go and look at each aircraft in turn and bring out the appropriate detail. That was a relatively large job. I took it even further, as I'll show you in a second, but I did this to see if this sample utilization rate was similar to the sample utilization rate I got from the other data that I've explained already. I also showed that we've got a registration number. You can track these, by the way. Go online, put that in. You don't even need to say it's Emirates because A6 tells you that, or that tells you it's from the Emirates. Aircraft type, MSN, manufacturer's serial number, and then how old they are in years. And I've pulled out from here that they're Boeing or Airbus. They're only Boeing or Airbus for Emirates. And I created this for each of the Emirates aircraft that I sampled, 30 of them. This is the data I pulled out. The end date is the 2nd of March 2024. The start date, 26th of July 2023. This aircraft flew for 220 days. The absolute ideal, 100% ideal hours for this period is 8784. For this craft, the possible hours from 220 days that it could have flown, 5 to 80, but it actually flew only 2464 hours. And that gave it a utilization rate of 28.06%. Same for all of them, all 30 of them. And you can see the utilization rates vary such a lot, as low as 28, 50, 52, 32, and so on. And this is just the first of them. The rest of the table is in my file. And I summarized all of that. And what did we find? Total days, possible hours, total hours, mean standard deviation. There we are, 46.69% for 2024 from this deeper dive into the Emirates fleet. A 10% sample is almost 50-50 Boeing versus Airbus. And the number of planes out of all of them that flew 365 days a year was 15. Let me just highlight some of my visualization tools and analysis techniques. I've used spark lines. They turned out very well, by the way. Coefficient of variation, I'm coming to that. Pivot tables, you've seen one already. And I've used formulations such as choose calls, sequence, XLOOKUP, filter for dynamic data management, and it works really well. These allow me to create rich, detailed visualizations illustrating airline utilization patterns for different regions, times, and operational models. Update 2025. I volunteered to lead this session, for which opportunity I am grateful, and for this reason, to update my data set, and for that I collected data for the period 2nd of September 2025 to the 26th of September 2025, about 3.5 weeks. And on the 3rd of September, missing a day, I decided that I'd add a 6th airline, China Eastern Airlines. So not only did I generate the new data for the sake of updating it, but I did it to see if my 2024 sample could be replicated in 2025. And furthermore, would my new airline reveal anything new and interesting that I'd not seen in 2024? The method of data collection was the same as before, albeit only for 3.5 weeks and not for 2 months. And here's the kind of thing that I found. There's my spark line. Fleet size by airline as at 2nd of September 2025, 271, 304, 1504. The update for Emirates by day, by date, by hour of the day, histogram, and box and whisker. In my Excel file, all of these are available for all airlines. This time, I used a let function for the following descriptive statistics. It's the same data, but driven by a let statement now, rather than anything else. Not bicol, not equals average, equals median. No, I used this. It worked very well, you can see, it works very well. You create this, which actually, for those who are afraid of it, especially this part, really very simple. I used bicol to define each item, but then pulled it all together using the H stack and V stack. And from there, again, using Sparkline, again, I think they're quite effective. Means, median, standard deviation, skewness, which can be plus or minus. So I use the win-loss Sparkline for that. And the coefficient of variation, which I'll come to in a second. The coefficient of variation, its definition is the standard deviation divided by the mean. Standard deviation divided by the mean, that. Standard deviation divided by the mean, that. Emirates, coefficient of variation is 0.163, and Singapore, 0.154. That suggests very low variability in that these carriers run extremely consistent schedules relative to their fleet, and fleet utilization appears steady day to day, snapshot to snapshot. And it suggests strong predictability in operations, maybe because of hub and spoke models and long-haul scheduling, which generally is less erratic because they're in the air a lot longer. British Airways 0.261, moderate compared to this, stable but less so than Emirates and Singapore. As a global network carrier with more varied routes, long, short, domestic, day-to-day utilization fluctuates more. United and China Eastern, 0.4, 0.4, almost identical. High variability. So these full service carriers run dense domestic networks in addition to long-haul flights. And they're more subject to peaks and troughs in daily scheduling and operational variability, weather, air traffic control constraints, and so on, as you'll see from their diagrams in a second. And Ryanair, top of the shop, 0.607, very high variability. The ultra low cost model means utilization is tightly coupled to daily demand and seasonality, and snapshot data will vary a lot depending on weekday, weekend, holiday peaks, early, late flights, and so on. And the high coefficient of variation shows utilization is less smooth and heavily demand driven. My mystery chart for Emirates in more detail. This is a comparison of 2024, blue, and 2025, orange. Steep climb from the overnight downturn, steep climb, steep fall, steep climb, and then fairly steady for the rest of the day. Goes down, comes back. Because I've taken this over 2 months, 3 months, this is a confirmed pattern for Emirates. And this is for 2025 alone. Just so you can see, there's only 3.5 weeks data, but the pattern is the same as the orange one. I've summarized the behavior below, as you can see. Singapore, I put Singapore next because do you not think it's about the same as Emirates? Very similar, isn't it? I put the 2 years together again. A decline this time, a rise, and then typical Singapore Airlines, very consistent almost the whole of the rest of the day. And then because of where it is and how it flies, planes landing, taking off, round and round in the circle every day. There's a 2025 data only. The vertical scale is different compared to that one, but the pattern's the same. British Airways, this one looks like a Mexican hat to me. Here's the pattern. Like that. I didn't deep dive British Airways, as it says in the text. It's got domestic, short haul, long haul, medium haul. So which is which? And we've also got the Heathrow shutdown and so on. We can't have any flights between the hours of X and Y. But there we are, a Mexican hat. And that pattern's repeated in 2025. Now look at these two. I found these fascinating. United Airlines, remember, a very large fleet, 1,500, and it goes this way. By the way, I will point out all the times on all these charts are Dubai UAE time. I had to set a standard, and I didn't set the UTC standard, but I could have, but I didn't, just for my own convenience. And in my text, I do tell you that Chicago is 9 hours behind Dubai. London and Dublin are 3 hours ahead or behind, whichever it happens to be, and the same with Singapore, and the same with Shanghai. So I do give you the insights. Anyway, look at that, a big letter U, and confirmed in 2025. The biggest surprise I got, even though I thought this diagram was a surprise by itself, the biggest surprise is in 2024, I didn't find it in 2025, some of its records down here were 0, no flights at all. But very commonly, 3, 7, 12, they absolutely shut down at this time. This is Dubai time, about 9 a.m. So by about 6 a.m. Dublin time, London time, there's no one flying with Ryanair. Confirmed in 2025, but can you see here, there's a split. Around about that time, and it goes that way. So at different times of the day, we seem to have, let me be very fancy, called it a bifurcation. Again, I didn't deep dive, I don't know why that is, but I don't know, I suppose pleased to see it. You don't see it there. I didn't see it here either. But then again, remember, this is winter. The orange is in winter, January, February, March. Here we are probably still in fairly peak holiday season in early September. And there's China Eastern, yet another pattern, down to very low, about 10% utilization, a very steep climb very early in the day, which is then maintained and tails off, as you can see there. Letter N, upside down U. But again, look how consistent it is from day to day, from week to week. Why am I so pleased with this? This is fleet management. I had no idea. When I started this job, I really had no idea what I was going to find. Aeroplanes flying, aeroplanes not flying. Let's have a graph. But this one was the biggest, most pleasant surprise of all. I now know, we now know, if you'd never thought of this before, we now know how Emirates manages its day. And Singapore Airlines, and British Airways, and United, Ryanair, and China Eastern. And I imagine if I put more and more airlines in there, I would get more of these. Maybe Qatar Airways, Etihad, worthwhile testing. KLM Air France, Lufthansa, maybe I get more of them, Mexican hats. There are 4 or 5 very large American airlines. Are they all like that? And same with I don't know how many low-cost, low-frills airlines there are, but in Europe we have Ryanair, EasyJet. There are more, I can't think of any. Over here in Thailand, in the Southeast ASEAN region, we've got AirAsia and a few more, and I wonder if they are the same. But there you are, fleet management, because of holiday time, weather, the fact that you're here in the middle of nowhere, relatively, rather than in a massive hub like Europe or the Americas. In summary, some clear insights emerge. Long-haul focus airlines with hub and spoke models maintain steady, predictable utilization rates day to day. Carriers with dense domestic networks or mixed fleets operate with higher variability to adjust to demand peaks, and ultra-low-cost carriers have the most marked fluctuations in aircraft utilization. And understanding these patterns then helps to explain the aircraft that are parked that we've seen at the airports. Grounding might represent strategic scheduling rather than inefficiency, and of course, aircraft need to be turned around. The larger aircraft, an hour or two. Ryanair, of course, they turn their aircraft around in minutes, 15, 20 minutes even, I've seen or I've heard. So there's a lot of stress and pressure depending on who and what and where you are. So why do we care about aircraft utilization? Well, because I thought a bit, but also because it impacts operational efficiency and profitability, fleet and maintenance planning, environmental footprint and fuel use, and a better understanding of utilization helps airlines optimize schedules, reduce idle time, and better serve their customers. As a final summary, aircraft utilization rates vary widely, as you've seen. Emirates averages 47.5, 46.69, 48 and something, with low day-to-day variability. Singapore shows similar tendencies. British Airways, moderate. United and China Eastern, highly variable. Ryanair, dramatic daily fluctuations. This analysis is based on real flight data from flightradar24.com and fleet size info, and it offers a revealing insight into how modern airlines operate. Well, thank you for joining me in this exploration of modern airline fleet utilization, and I hope it provides you with some new insights into the complex world of commercial aviation. And I'm sure I'll make my Excel file available to everyone. It's quite dense, by the way, but I have included a lot of the more up-to-date things like dynamic array functions, let, lambda, and so on, that you might care to have a look at. Okay, thank you. Any questions, I'll be happy to at least try to answer them. Thank you very much indeed.